Amber called to me from her safe seat in the motorboat. I bit my lip. Why was I floating in the cold, murky water of the lake in the early morning trying to wake surf? Because a spy needs to be ready for everything. Today is day 2 of camp at Camp Satek. Last week, the WSA contacted me about the Shadow, as he is called. This Shadow is causing trouble at this youth camp. So far, nobody has been hurt, but many kids have been scared. I was sent to capture this Shadow before he hurt anybody. So far, nobody has seen the Shadow except from a distance. This person wears all black, including a black mask covering his or her face. Yesterday, I arrived to see Amber standing at the sign-in line. We were ecstatic. Since Amber had moved, we hadn't seen each other much, and now we were assigned to the same mission. I fought my thoughts back and forced myself to listen to what the instructor was telling me.
When the rope gets taut, push down on your heels. Remember, it is natural to feel like you need to pull your arms in and keep your legs straight, but don't. Keep your arms out and pull your knees to your chest,
he said, holding the edge of the board floating under my feet. I nodded, lying flat on my back in the water. The instructor waved to the boat. The rope went taut in my hands. I shoved my heels down and my knees were shoved to my chest by force of the water against the board. I kept my arms as straight as possible. The instructor grabbed my foot and repositioned it to a better position on the board. Then he waved to the boat again. Suddenly, I was moving slowly upward and through the water. I wobbled as I rose, crouching out of the water. The tug of the rope pulled me to my feet. Once I was fully up, the boat sped up, creating a large wake for me to ride. I remembered the advice of the instructor as I removed my left hand from the rope, letting it drag in the wake. The breeze kicked up by the speed washed over my skin, raising goosebumps on my bare arms and legs. A small smile spread on my lips. I looked up from staring at my feet. The land rushed past. I gazed around, wondering why I hadn't tried this before. As we passed a group of docks, a figure caught my eye. I turned to look at the person in black. Just as I did, the board flipped out from under my feet. I slammed into the water and came up coughing. The board was a couple yards away. I swam over and grabbed it while waiting for the boat to circle back. Once the boat was back, I refused the offer to try again and climbed shivering into the boat. The only other girl, Adele, quickly climbed into the water for her turn. Once the boat was moving again, Amber whispered,
"What happened? You were doing so good."
"I saw it," I whispered, then gave Adele a thumbs up.
"So what?"
"The Shadow. It was a black blur standing on a dock. I couldn't get a good look because the board took off without me." I gestured to the now empty dock.
"You're kidding."
Amber looked grim. I shook my head.
"Your collapse might not have been an accident then."
I considered that. The jolt did seem like the board had hit some hidden obstacle. "It seems like our adversary is informed about us," I murmured as the boat circled back around to pick Adele up. Once Adele was safely in the boat, we took off in search of the instructor, who was floating somewhere in the middle of the lake. Reaching the camp's dock, we hurriedly changed out of our swimsuits because breakfast was halfway done. I wished I could have spoken to Amber more about the Shadow, but we weren't alone for the next couple hours. At R&R time, I tossed a note to Amber on the bunk next to mine. I had written, "What should we do this afternoon during free time? There are so many ways the Shadow could capture or harm the campers. The high ropes course, horseback riding, tubing, etc." I closed my eyes, feigning sleep as our counselor glanced our way. With my eyes closed, I didn't see the paper missile that beamed me in the nose. I unfolded the note. It was from Adele, in the bunk above Amber. "Hey, want to do the ropes course with me this afternoon?" I quickly scrawled an answer, telling Adele that I'd love to. I leaned out of my bunk and tossed the note up to her. She quickly read it and grinned. Amber's note fell in my lap as I lay down.
"We should split up. I wish we had the other girls with us so that we could cover all the activities. What do you want to do?"
I scribbled another note telling her what Adele had asked. Amber read it and nodded. Then she lay down. Her eyes closed and her breathing slowed. I grinned. Amber was a master at falling asleep quickly, a necessary spy ability. I knew that at the slightest sound she'd be ready to move, but she would appear to be still sleeping. I closed my eyes again, knowing that I'd not fall asleep, but wanted to look as if I were. Who knew who the Shadow might be? It could be anyone. Even Adele. She may have gotten someone to wear her outfit and stand on the dock while trying to throw suspicion from herself. I'd have to watch her closely. I stepped out into the warm sun. I wore a comfortable pair of shorts and an old t-shirt. Adele stepped out of the cabin behind me, adjusting her ponytail. I stared at the thick blonde hair, wishing I could get my hands on it. I had already done Amber's hair into a braid that would keep her hair out of her face in the water. You'd think that she'd be tired of the water after wake surfing this morning, but she was going out tubing. I had pulled my hair into a loose ponytail for the ropes course. The warm sun made me wish I was wearing my sandals, but I knew I had to wear tennis shoes for the ropes course. Adele motioned for me to follow her and set off on an easy jog toward the sports field. Amber walked by in her blue and green swimsuit, going to swim until it was the girls' turn to go tubing. The shadow could hurt someone on the blob just as easily. I jogged after Adele, glad for my extensive spy training. I easily kept up with her. As we jogged, I thought about before that fateful meeting. I couldn't have kept a steady pace for more than 2 minutes. Now I could run long distances and do all kinds of crazy things. There was a time when doing a ropes course wasn't high on my list of to-dos, but now it was whatever it took to keep people safe. The ropes course came into sight. It wasn't state-of-the-art, but it wasn't scrappy either. I slowed to view the course. Mostly a lot of tightrope walking. Definitely dangerous if your harness was sabotaged. It was probably about 25 to 30 feet up. As I gazed at it, Adele shoved a harness into my hands. I quickly put it on. It wasn't terribly different from those we would train in. Once we were harnessed, Adele pointed out the 2 ways up. You could climb a ladder made out of tires, or a beam dangling from the top, studded with nails. I chose the tires. At least I could move quicker if there was an emergency. I scrambled up the ladder. At the top, my legs and hands were dusted with black dust from the tires. I turned and moved carefully along one of the tight ropes, grabbing the helpful ropes to help pull myself along. Pretending that I was concentrating on the tightrope, I studied the people below and on the ropes course, comparing their build with that of the figure I'd seen. I hadn't gotten a good look, so I was guessing at height and weight. Ahead of me, Adele gasped. Her feet slid off the wire. One of her belay ropes snapped. The other looked like it would snap at any moment. I quickly crossed my wire and crept out onto hers. Just then, her rope snapped! The ropes course staff were too far away to assist. I reached out to grab her hand, but I missed. As she fell, Adele grabbed the wire. I winced, knowing how that could hurt. I carefully positioned myself, balancing on the wire. I hoped my ropes were secure in case I slipped as well. I reached down and grabbed Adele's wrists. Once I had a secure grip, Adele let go and swiftly grabbed mine. I pulled her up, swaying as the wire rocked, hoping I wouldn't fall and take Adele with me. Surely a fall like that would tear us apart, and Adele, if not both of us, would end up on the ground far below. We didn't fall. Adele grabbed onto my belay ropes with one hand and her carabiner with the other. I'm going to attach my harness to yours, she said. Hold still. She carefully clipped her carabiner to mine. Stupid shadow, she muttered. What? I asked. I said stupid staff, Adele paled, and they should have double-checked all the ropes before letting anyone climb. True, but that's not what you said. I carefully moved along the wire toward the end of the course. The worried staff member waited for us to move to her. Slowly, we inched along. I winced at every creak of the wire. It was only meant for one person at a time. Luckily, you didn't need your belay ropes to get down, so Adele went first. Then I followed. She stalked away from the ropes course in the direction of the archery range. Amber and I had scouted it out yesterday during free time. I caught up with her. The trail was silent and empty. What do you know about the shadow? I pressed. I am guessing you're more than a camper here. Yes, Agent Selka. I'm your backup. The WSA knew that you two would recognize each other right away, and that the shadow would get clued in on your presence. I was sent to keep an eye out and help you if you got in trouble. The WSA thinks the shadow was sent to draw your group out. They think an old enemy of yours wants revenge. Adele stopped walking, her hands on her hips. I thought about all the different people that would have a grudge against the Minneconsin sisters. I think the damaged harness was meant for you, but I received it accidentally. Or maybe the shadow knows that I'm here as well. The former is a better option than the second. Thanks a lot, I grumbled. You're very welcome, Adele grinned at me. Now, you're new to me. I've seen Agent AJ before. We work at the same base. She hasn't met me yet. Audrey, agent of the WSA, disguised specialty. I held out my hand. Adele, agent of the WSA, attack specialty. Adele grasped my hand in a firm grip. Attack? You get along with Aurora quite well, I grinned. She's a self-defense specialty. I've read the reports of your missions against Simeon, Adele nodded. You guys were great, especially for new recruits. When I first joined, I wandered around the halls at WSA trying to find my training room. Most of our training was out in the field. Not many agents can say that. Adele grinned, scooping up the left-handed bow. I noted that she'd been using her left hand a lot. That would come in handy as a surprise against the shadow. Adele stepped onto the line and grabbed an arrow. She swiftly knocked it and sent it flying at the target. It hit dead center. 2 more quickly followed it. Wow, I gasped. Adele glanced up. This is how I blow off steam. My usual weapon is a bow, so I've gotten a lot of practice. She gave me a small smile.
Did I miss an interesting conversation?
Amber stepped up to the bow rack. Her hair was damp and partially plastered to her head. Not necessarily, Adele said quickly. She shook her head at me while Amber picked up a bow. How's the tubing? I asked.
It was fun. Not nearly as momentous as I would have expected,
Amber said.
But I did pass the 10-second challenge.
Awesome, Adele cheered. Amber stepped to the line and pulled out one of the arrows. She knocked it and pulled the string back to her ear. Holding it there, she sighted down the arrow at the target. A whistling blur flew by. Amber jumped and her arrow went wild. A thin cut had sliced along the top of Amber's arm. Adele jumped over the line and ran over to the target. She pulled a cloth out of her backpack and carefully removed the new arrow from the target. Definitely not summer camp criteria. She held up the arrow so we could see a sharp tip glinting with red.
Look at the end,
Amber pointed. There was a paper wrapped around the shaft. Adele carefully removed it, not touching the arrow.
I won't miss again.
Adele looked up from the note on the arrow. I gulped.
You have 36 hours until I kill again. S.
Again? What does that mean?
Amber grimaced. I looked at her arm. The cut wasn't deep and was already crusting over. Does it hurt? I asked.
At first, but not now.
Adele still stared at the note. She lifted it to her nose. Kneeling, Adele laid the note on the bench. She pulled a small vial and paintbrush out of her pocket. She slowly began brushing the liquid over the note. After a moment, she smiled grimly. Lemon juice. Never leave home without it. Then she frowned. The note continues.
You'd better move fast. The arrow tip was poisoned. You have 36 hours until your friend is dead. Then I move on.
Oh no! I gasped. Does it say what kind of poison? No, but if it did, I could have found an antidote for it. So there's your answer. The shadow knows about me. Adele bit her lip.
About you? What about you?
Amber asked. Adele works for the WSA. She's supposed to be our incognito backup, I explained. Not so incognito, I guess, Adele muttered. How are you feeling, Amber? Amber gasped.
It's not true. I have leg cramp.
She stood and quickly started walking in a circle. A small group of campers walked into the archery area. They glanced at us, then at the number of bows. Don't worry, we're just leaving, Adele smiled. The campers smiled. We quickly walked off. Only as we crossed the wide open sports field did we relax.
Do you think it was wise to leave those campers there? I mean, with the shadow and all?
The shadow said he wouldn't attack again for another 36 hours, Adele said. No, he said he wouldn't kill again for another 36 hours, I shrugged. But I think he'd more be interested in watching what we do than attacking other people. Adele nodded.
What am I gonna do about this?
Amber asked, holding her arm against her chest. Well, tonight's crazy night. We could wrap it up in bandages for your outfit. Nobody'd look twice, I grinned, thinking about the second suitcase I had brought. Our counselor had looked dubiously at it. I had packed all my disguise stuff in it. Amber had a backpack with her tracking stuff in it and a suitcase with her clothes. We hurried back to our cabin, 13A. Nobody was there, because they were all out doing the afternoon activities. Amber used some alcohol swabs to clean the wound, wincing against the sting. Adele wrapped it in some gauze. I pulled out a cast and slipped it on her arm. Adele and I quickly created fake injuries and then wrapped them up. Now it would just look like we had planned it for crazy night.